Good morning and welcome. My name is Oreen Chowdhury, and I'm the chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. I'm going to call to order our regular meeting for Tuesday, June 4th. I'll now have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wansley.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Ellison is absent. Osman is absent. Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Chuktai.
Present.
Koski is absent. Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Rainville.
Present.
Chair Chowdhury.
Present.
We have 10 present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. I'm going to pass it over to Councilmember Rainville who would like to say a couple words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to offer a moment of silence for fallen officer Jamal Mitchell, and especially to have us keep his children in our prayers. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rainville. We have 2 items on our consent agenda today. The first item is a passage of a resolution related to the local approval of a special law for liquor licenses for Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board premises. I actually am going to ask our IGR team to come up and just speak a little bit to this so the body has an understanding of what it is.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Council members. Katie Topinka, IGR Director. This past session, the legislature passed a special law that will allow liquor licenses on any Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board premises for caterers or entities with a contract with the park board, and it also exempts those entities from the indoor seating requirements that are in state statute, which is currently requiring 30 seats if you're providing on sale liquor for consumption indoors. And so this would allow for liquor licenses at any MPRB facility and exempts those entities from the indoor seating requirements. So the legislature passed the special law, and then in order for the law to go into effect, the city council also has to approve it. And so that's what the resolution is before you. And this is something the council has done in the past with other special liquor laws. The RCA has links to past actions the council has taken and past resolutions. So by approving the resolution, then that will mean this law goes into effect, and then our business licensing team can work with MPRB should there be any businesses that are seeking liquor licenses under these new requirements.
Thank you so much, Director Topinka. I'll look to see if anyone on the body has any questions. Council President Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious around, this. I believe this is limited specifically to parkland, and I was wondering if there's any discussion at the state around allowing other entities to participate in this exemption at some point in the future.
Madam Chair and Council President Payne, there was not, my recollection is there was not a lot of discussion about that when the bill was heard. It was pretty focused on the park board property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes. Councilmember Wansley.
Chair Chowdhury, are we using speaker management? Because if so, it's not working, I think, for a number of us over here.
Well, it looks like
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for notifying. Is there anyone else that would like to ask any questions? Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury, and thank you, Director Topinka. Just to understand, so in the future for businesses that are on Parkland who want to apply for this license, it'll come through City Council, through our biz committee in the regular process that we have?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Cashman, that's correct. So this just, the resolution you're considering today approves the law, the special law, but then entities will still have to go through the regular liquor licensing process, which includes a public hearing at the biz committee.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to ask any questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk just to call. Actually, I will just ask so we can move this forward. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. With that, that passes. Okay. The next item is a passage of a resolution supporting the Brittany Clardy Missing and Murdered Women and Girls Act. I'll just quickly speak to that, and then I will be joined by some fellow council members to just share out the resolution. On February 20th, 2023, the Minnesota House of Representatives voted to create the nation's first Office of Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls. This is after years of work led by Representative Ruth Richardson, supported by Representative Hassan, Clardy, Agbaje, Frazier, Moeller, Becker-Finn, Noor, Hortman, Hollins, and a number of other legislators. On the Senate side, Senator Umuvert Baton, Senator Mohammed, Senator Pha, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. And this work was made possible by the work of Senator Kunish and Representative Becker-Finn, establishing the Office for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives. I'm really proud that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is bringing this work to the federal level to establish an Office of Murdered and Missing Black Women and Girls in the Department of Justice. Minnesota led the charge at the state level of establishing the first in the nation, and I would particularly like to thank Brittany Clardy's family, specifically her sister Lakeisha Lee, who has been leading the effort in community to shine a light on this crisis and this epidemic of missing and murdered Black women and girls, and just appreciate the members of this body for standing in solidarity as we add this to our federal legislative agenda. And I'd like to thank our intergovernmental relations team for their work on this as well, and Ade Salami in my office, who spent a lot of time on the resolution. If members would like to join me up front, we will do a reading of the resolution. I have a couple copies here with me. This is supporting the Brittany Clardy Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls Act, Congressional Bill HR 6828. Whereas Brittany Clardy, an 18-year-old young Black woman from St. Paul, Minnesota, was a daughter, sister, friend, and beloved community member. And whereas in 2013, tragically, Brittany Clardy was murdered and taken from her family. She was missing for 2 weeks before she was found.
Whereas Brittany's story is unfortunately one that resonates with many, and this legislation is dedicated to the memory of Minnesotans like her and the many Black women and girls who have been victims of crimes but whose cases were initially ignored. And whereas Black women and girls face disproportionate rates of violence and neglect, with Black women and girls often overlooked in public discussions about missing and murdered individuals. In 2020, despite making up only 15% of the female population in the United States, they accounted for nearly 34% of all missing girls and women reported, 90,333 out of 268,084. And whereas
cases involving missing Black girls and women remain open 4 times longer than those involving other demographic groups on average, highlighting significant disparities in the attention and resources allocated to these cases. And whereas Black women experience the highest rates of death due to homicide among all women in the United States, with a rate of 4.4 per 100,000 compared to 1.5 per 100,000 for white women, these murders are most often committed by intimate partners or someone the victim knows. And whereas
addressing violence against Black women and girls requires an understanding of the historical and present-day manifestations of systemic racism and sexism, which contribute to their increased vulnerability. And whereas effective research and policy solutions must involve community engagement, use mixed approaches, and include long-term evaluation plans to build a comprehensive understanding and effective response to the violence faced by Black women and girls. And
whereas the Minnesota State Legislature in July of 2022 passed the nation's first Office of Missing and Murdered African American Women and Girls, modeled after the work done through the Office of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, as Native women experience violence nearly at the same rate as Black women, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And whereas current federal resources are inadequate to address the specific needs of Black women and girls, additional resources must be allocated to protect, support, and provide justice for this demographic. And
whereas HR 6828, known as the Brittany Clardy Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls Act, introduced by Representative Ilhan Omar, seeks to establish an office for missing and murdered Black women and girls within the Department of Justice to address these disparities. And whereas HR 6828 would require the Department of Justice to collect and track data, make recommendations, and create a national advisory commission of Black women and girls who've experienced violence, abduction, or trafficking, and family members who have lost a loved one to this violence.
now therefore be it resolved that the City of Minneapolis supports the establishment of the Office for Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls and believes that the creation of an office within the Department of Justice is essential to address the disparities in the response to cases involving Black women and girls. Number 2, the City of Minneapolis calls for comprehensive data collection and analysis of missing persons and homicide cases involving Black women and girls, including case resolution rates, lengths of time cases remain open, and comparisons with other demographic groups.
Third, the City of Minneapolis supports the formation of a National Advisory Commission and believes the establishment of a National Advisory Commission comprised of Black women and girls who have experienced violence, abduction, or trafficking, and family members of victims will provide essential insights and recommendations. Fourth, the City of Minneapolis advocates for coordination between federal, state, local, and tribal agencies, as well as local family services, as this is crucial to ensure comprehensive and effective responses to cases involving Black women and girls.
5, the City of Minneapolis endorses support for community-based organizations and believes grants should be provided to community-based organizations offering culturally appropriate services designed to prevent and end the targeting of Black women and girls and to support victims and their families.
be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Tina Smith, and members of the House Committee on the Judiciary to express the City of Minneapolis' support for HR 6828.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I see one council member in queue. I'll call on Councilmember Vita.
Thank you. I just want to publicly state why I didn't read the resolution with Councilmember Chowdhury. I received an email last evening about the resolution, and Councilmember Chowdhury sent the email asking if I wanted to read the resolution with her. This morning, I sent her a series of texts that I'm happy to make public about how disappointed I was in the fact that as a Black woman who sits on this council, she and her office never reached out to me to talk about this resolution that speaks to Black women and girls. I also stated to Councilmember Chowdhury that, I think it's gross to talk about Black women and girls and not talk to the Black women that sit on the council with you about something that's important. She, of course, just, text me back about how she felt about it and not really acknowledge that a Black woman was saying to her that this was not okay. My office should have been contacted weeks ago. She thought she validated her comments by saying that Congresswoman Omar asked her to do it. I think that's fine. But sometimes in this job, you have to pass the work on to the people that it represents. As I said in the text message, she should have told Congresswoman Omar that there are 3 Black women sitting here and they should bring this forward. But she didn't. She thought she needed to, and she never contacted me at all about it. This work has been going on for years. Senator Jeff Hayden and Ruth Richardson started this work years ago. There's a documentary that is specific to Minnesota about Black women and girls from our community. She never asked me anything before. She decided she was going to make a political stunt and bring it forward herself. It's gross. This matter is serious. These are Black women and girls in this community and around the world that we're talking about. I don't speak for her community, and she shouldn't be speaking for mine, period.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Vita, for your remarks. Happy to speak with you more offline.
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments from council members at this time? Wonderful. All those in favor of passing the resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The resolution carries. We will now move forward to our next discussion item, a presentation providing updates of our federal and state actions affecting the city of Minneapolis now that the legislative session has ended. I'll now invite our intergovernmental relations staff to introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury and council members. We are going to present a summary of the end of the legislative session or recap of the entire session. Before we get into that, we are going to give a brief federal update. And I'll just note that the Congress over the course of the summer is going to be working on the federal budget. And part of that, of course, is the congressionally directed spending or earmarks process. So I'll invite Ms. Olson up to give an update on earmarks, and then we will turn to the state legislative session summary.
Madam Chair, council members, good morning. Lauren Olson, Senior Government Relations Representative. I'm just going to provide you with a brief update on the status of earmarks, and then we'll move into the overview of what happened at the legislature this session. So just to remind everyone that we submitted our 6 proposals from the city back at the end of April and in May. And what has happened thus far, there's 2 parallel processes that are both different in the House and Senate. But House members have selected their projects. House members get to select 15 projects, as we've discussed before. Quite often, those 15 projects will continue to the very end of the process, and if appropriations are approved by Congress, then they tend to be included. So it's really great to be selected. And we will talk about, Representative Omar selected a couple of our projects, and we'll talk about that momentarily. And we appreciate that she picked 2 city projects out of her 15. Our U.S. senators have also advanced projects onto the next stage. I've formally heard from Senator Klobuchar's office that they advanced all 6 of our projects to the next step, and I believe that Smith has as well. The Senate process does work a little bit differently, and so they disclose what has been submitted in phases, and then subcommittees will evaluate those proposals, and the list tends to get reduced through that subcommittee process. So we will be monitoring to see, out of the projects that our senators have been kind enough to forward, if some of those continue through the process. So we'll keep an eye out on that. As we've discussed before, these earmarks are not final until the appropriation is ultimately passed. I don't expect that to happen until after the election this year. It's also not uncommon for Congress to end up making that, finalizing that at the end of the year or even early in '25. As you may recall, this year they adopted their budget for fiscal year '24 in March of 2024. So until that time, we don't really ever know if an earmark is going to be available to us. And then, of course, it requires to be signed by the president. So again, this is a list of the 6 projects that I've presented to you before. We basically identified all enterprise projects that were eligible for this process, and that's what we submitted. The ones shown with an asterisk were selected by Representative Omar for her list of 15. So the fire alerting system to upgrade 19 fire stations, and our pedestrian safety and accessibility to ensure that the city is accessible for all users. So we really appreciate that she selected these 2 projects for us. And that is the current status, and are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Lauren. We have Councilmember Payne in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know in the past with some of these federal earmarks, we would usually put in a request, and then once it went through the DC sausage making, it would come out the other side, some different number.
Yes.
I was wondering if you had any insights into, I don't know if you need to go through each one of these bullets, but if there was any kind of highlights from that process that would help us understand context.
Council President Payne, thank you for that question, and Chair Chowdhury. Yes, last year, especially on the House side, what ended up happening is a significant reduction from the amount that Representative Omar requested. And I've been having conversations with Representative Omar's office about that topic because we are hoping to see, especially on the fire alerting system, the full amount, because it becomes more awkward and difficult for us to fund it if we get a partial award and we haven't budgeted for additional funding, or they have the chief of staff in Representative Omar's office they've agreed to try some additional efforts to really communicate the need to fund that in the full amount, because whereas the pedestrian safety and accessibility is a little bit more flexible. And I've also discussed this issue with Senator Smith's office as well. It's possible that the fire alerting system will show up on the Senate side as well, and again at a different amount, and that maybe they'll be reconciled at some point. But we have raised these issues, and we appreciate that our delegation is putting in some extra effort to try to keep the awards whole. But we are also working internally with the budget process and other steps to ensure that we'll be able to work with an award that maybe is not exactly what we asked for.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members on this part of the presentation? Okay.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now we'll dive into a recap of the 2024 legislative session. So it was a very productive 2 years for this legislature. There were more than 5,000 bills introduced in each chamber during, it says here 2024-25 biennium, that should say 2023-24 legislature. And then there were 127 new bills passed. And I think, as many people are aware, on the last day of session, there was a large omnibus bill that included a number of provisions, and it also included many city priorities. And so Ms. Falana and Mr. Huser will go into more detail on these items, but the large bill passed on the last day of session did include the comprehensive plan clarification bill, the traffic safety camera pilot authorization, and then pedestrian mall authorization. So you will be hearing more about those. And then there was no capital investment bill passed this year. So as we've shared at previous presentations, for a general obligation bonding bill to pass, it requires a supermajority, so it needs to be bipartisan. And the House and Senate leaders on both sides of the aisle were unable to come to an agreement before the end of session on a general obligation bonding bill. There was a cash bonding bill that passed the House, but did not pass the Senate at the end of session because they ran out of time. And Steve will talk a little bit more about some of the details of that. So I'm going to just talk a bit about some tax provisions and labor provisions that passed before handing it off to other members of the team. So there was there were only a few tax provisions that passed this year, not a large tax bill, but it did include an enhancement to the child tax credit, so it allows recipients of the child tax credit to apply to receive advance payments, so that they don't have to wait for the point during the year when that may come, but could apply to receive it in advance, which is really helpful to people who are relying on that funding to help with their basic needs. It also included a minerals article, which is support for the Iron Range, and some different programs specifically for the Iron Range. It also included changes to the tax forfeiture process that were requested by the Association of Minnesota Counties. And in a separate bill, there was also funding for the Tyler settlement, which was the Supreme Court decision around tax forfeited properties and whether counties can sell them for and keep the payments without giving that back to the homeowners. So it included funding for that settlement with the expectation that there will be counties who need to repay some homeowners coming forward, and also a process for that, how to handle those. Some things that did not make it into a final tax bill that we have talked with you all about were the changes to the downtown taxing boundary. That was expanding it to include the North Loop and lowering the rate. That was in the House tax bill and was alive till the end of session, but with the sort of skinny version of the tax bill that they ultimately passed, that was not included. The House and Senate had both been considering some changes to local sales tax authority and providing a process that cities could use to establish a new sales tax or extend a sales tax without needing legislative approval. Ultimately, that did not make it into a final tax bill either, but I'm anticipating there will be more discussion of that over the interim, and that will probably be revisited next year. And then land value taxation district was something the council added to the city's legislative agenda in March. That was moving in the House tax bill, but also did not make it into the final version of the tax bill. And then moving on to a couple of labor provisions. So there were some updates to the earned sick and safe time law that passed last year, as well as some paid family medical leave updates. So for earned sick and safe time, includes an exemption for volunteer and paid on-call firefighters, and restrictions on use for employees with duties related to public safety during weather events, and some other essential employees. So some clarifying provisions in earned sick and safe time that the League of Minnesota Cities and others had worked on. And our HR department is examining those and figuring out how to make sure we're in compliance with those changes. For paid family medical leave, it included a clarification to ensure that the first week of medical leave is covered, because there was a concern that perhaps the first week of leave wouldn't be covered because an individual has to prove they have a 7-day qualifying event. And so this just made some changes to ensure that that can be covered once an individual has proven they've had that event. This change will result in an increase to the payroll tax for that pays for the paid family medical leave program, but the amount of that increase hasn't been determined yet. It will be determined by the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And similarly, our HR department is working on how to ensure the city's in compliance with paid family medical leave. That law does not go into effect until January of 2026. And then there were some changes to the Public Employee Labor Relations Act. And those are things, of course, we'll have to make sure we're complying with. There were some changes around how the payroll deduction for employees who are paying union fees, how that process works. There's also some clarification around ensuring union representatives have access to new employees and some rules around meetings between union representatives and employees. So those are things we'll have to make sure the city is up to speed on. And then finally, in the labor section of the bill, the omnibus bill that passed, there was a change that clarified that state prevailing wage applies to low-income housing tax credit projects, and that it applies to tax credits that the state is allocating, but also local governments. Minneapolis is a tax credit sub-allocator, and so we do, most of our projects have both. If we're issuing tax credits, it also has Affordable Housing Trust Fund money in it. That already triggers prevailing wage. So most of our projects are already complying with federal prevailing wage. But now we will have to make sure we're just in compliance with the state prevailing wage standards for tax credit projects. So that's a summary of the labor provisions. And I can pause for questions before we turn it over to Mr. Huser to move on to transportation.
Yes. Thank you so much, Director Topinka. I think as each member of the IGR team comes up, we'll pause for questions so we can break it up a little bit. I'll go to Council President Payne, who's in queue.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. I was curious for the pedestrian mall authorization, if we have any clarity around what steps we have to take as a city to be able to enable that. I'm assuming we'll at least have to pass some resolutions saying, here goes the corridors that we would like to pedestrianize, but are there other like land use things that we have to also update?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Payne, if we can maybe hold on that question, because Steve Huser is going to cover those updates and can answer that in his presentation. If you're okay with that, that's coming up on another slide.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Topinka. I'm wondering about a couple of items on the tax bill that didn't pass in preparation for next year. So one is the downtown tax boundary. The boundary extension that we've been asking for a few years now. I think it was 2022 that this was first added to our agenda. Is that what was proposed this year in terms of the geographic extension?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cashman, yes, it was. So the geographic extension would have added the North Loop and then parts of Elliott Park that are currently not included in the downtown taxing boundary.
Okay, thank you. And can you give me a sense of what level of reduction overall would be experienced if this does pass next year?
Yes, Madam Chair and Councilmember Cashman. So this affects two taxes, the downtown liquor tax and the downtown entertainment tax. And currently, both of those have a 3% rate. This would reduce both to 2.5%.
Okay, thank you so much. And was there any discussion of this in committee or in a hearing that indicates that there's support to work on this next session?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Cashman, yes, we had a hearing in the House Property Tax Division on the bill, and there was support in that committee. The House did include it in their omnibus tax bill. And then, we had conversations in the conference committee process, and there seemed to be support for it. I think part of what it was just sort of running out of time and having a smaller tax bill, that I think this was just one of the things that didn't ultimately make it through. But our sense is there is support for it, and I think we can revisit it next year, certainly.
Okay, thanks. And my second question wasn't mentioned on the slide, but it is about the converting underutilized buildings tax credit. And I know that it was first introduced this year. And I'm wondering if you can give me a sense of how that was received and what modifications were proposed in its committee hearing.
Sure, Madam Chair and Councilmember Cashman. There was a hearing on that proposal in the Senate Tax Committee. So this is a proposal to create a tax credit to convert commercial spaces or underutilized commercial spaces to housing or other uses. I think there was a really good discussion. Mayor Fry came and testified, and there were people from cities across the state who are experiencing similar issues to Minneapolis, and that there are vacant buildings that are not being used and could be converted to a different use. So there certainly, I think, was a good case made for the need. There were some questions on technical aspects of the bill that I think will need to be worked on over the interim and going into next session. But there's a lot of interest in the issue, and I think growing recognition that there is a need both for just making sure we don't have vacant buildings, but also to help with tax base in cities statewide, not just Minneapolis, that there's some support needed to work on this issue. So I do anticipate there will continue to be a lot of discussions between now and next session with all the stakeholders involved, and that come back with a stronger proposal for next session.
Thank you for the update, and thanks for your work on these items.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. My question is actually related to some of the funding allocations for shelters, because I know that's a top of mind priority for a number of us who are looking to champion resources towards our unhoused or unsheltered community. And I had assumed, or I believe there was a appropriation made towards this, but I didn't see it here.
Yeah, Councilmember Wansley, Ms. Falana will be covering that in a later part of the presentation. So if you're okay waiting for that, we'll answer that question then.
Great. And then also, I just wanted to say for the labor provisions, I was really excited for the payroll changes. I also worked with the Broad Coalition who championed that across the finish line, and recognizing that directly impacts thousands, tens of thousands of students in my ward who now have a pathway towards unionization, which is really, really exciting after many, many failed attempts to try to unionize students there. So really excited about this presidential legislation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Wansley and Director Topinka. I don't think there are any other questions at this time on this part of the presentation. Steve Huser, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Steve Huser. I'm a Senior Government Relations Representative for the IGR Department. I'll be covering the transportation, public safety, cannabis, and bonding parts of the presentation. As part of the Transportation Omnibus Bill, we were successful in getting a traffic safety camera pilot program authority included in the final agreement. This would be it's a 4-year pilot. It would be for the cities of Minneapolis and Mendota Heights would be authorized to conduct these pilot programs. There would also be a warning-only system or program that can be conducted by MnDOT and DPS at the state level for work zone areas. I do have, if there are specific questions about that, Ethan Foley from Public Works is also available to answer questions today, but maybe we can wait for that at the end. We were also successful in expanding our authority for cities to create pedestrian malls. What they finally agreed upon was a tiered system where cities of the first class, or cities with populations over 100,000 people, are allowed to have, I would say, full authority over all of the city rights of way within their cities, with one caveat: if a road jurisdiction is neighboring to another city, so if our city right-of-way was running into a neighboring city's right-of-way, we would have to have a process to consult with that city and then have mutual sign-off on any pedestrian malls that were created on adjoining right-of-way. And then the bill also does require that if we have adjacent right-of-way with a county or state portion of a right-of-way. So for example, a city street is running perpendicular to a county road. We would have to consult with those road authorities, but would not necessarily have to get their sign off. But we would have to put in writing that and have a very public process about why we were proceeding forward with against maybe their wishes. Cities that are under 100,000 or non-first class cities would also have this new authority, but their authority would be restricted to non-residential areas within their city, on city right-of-way only. The transportation bill also included a provision that requires Met Council to include pedestrian accessibility signal components within ABRT project scoping, but this does require then a 50-50 split of those costs between local governments, the local government and the state government. We were hoping to have all of those costs put within the project scope, but what was finally agreed to by the House and the Senate was to have a split of the cost there. We're hopeful that having these projects scoped with all of these components in place will help us in the future get potentially more federal dollars and other funding sources to be brought into these projects. The bill also included the creation of a Blue Line Extension anti-displacement community prosperity program. The members of this board will at first will be part of the Blue Line Extension Anti-Displacement Working Group that was established by Hennepin County and the Met Council. That group then is directed to create bylaws, and they will also have the authority to make adjustments to that membership. And that will be the group that is then tasked with allocating funds that were redirected from a past allocation from last year's transportation bill. It's reallocating $10 million from a $50 million allocation that will be used for the purposes of combating anti-displacement along the Blue Line Extension corridor. So that will be for both business and residential anti-displacement work. And I just want to note that the city does have a seat on that board, so we are represented on that group. The bill also requires a consultation between the Met Council and MnDOT for all future light rail construction projects. Basically what that does is it requires a consultation and project assistance from MnDOT to Met Council. It does set parameters on when what types of areas they must consult with each other on. And then if the Met Council does consider any recommendations, they must consider the recommendations, but if they are deciding not to then implement a recommendation from MnDOT, they must put in writing publicly why they are deciding not to do that. Another provision in the transportation bill also restricts the use of the regional sales tax that was adopted last legislative session by requiring prior legislative approval for its use on light rail construction in the future. As part of a separate policy omnibus bill, the transportation committees agreed to a prohibition on road authorities from towing vehicles just simply for unpaid parking tickets. This does mean, though, that there can be other reasons to tow a vehicle that is parked illegally in the right-of-way under certain circumstances, but towing for simply unpaid parking tickets would no longer be allowed under state law. The bill also created a definition and registration requirement for roadable aircraft. In sum, what that provision does is it says if a roadable aircraft, and I'll step back a second, this bill was actually jokingly called the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang Law. And basically what it does is there are new aircrafts or road vehicles that can both drive on roads and fly. And basically the clarification here was when these vehicles are being driven, they must be registered as a road vehicle. And if they are being flown, they must be registered as an aircraft. So it was just clarifying that needed to be the case. As I think everyone on the council is aware, there was also the inclusion of a TNC or Uber and Lyft driver pay agreement. Now this, I'll go somewhat quickly over the provisions because I do think many of you are very aware of those provisions, but it does include 21 of 24 recommendations from the state work group that was related to looking at driver safety, insurance deactivation, transparency, and driver compensation. It includes data requirements. It sets a minimum driver compensation at $5 and then $1.28 per mile and 31 cents per minute. It does include preemption on local ordinances related to driver compensation. It gives the Department of Labor and Industry the statewide enforcement authority. However, it does allow local governments the ability to revoke an operator's license if that company is not in compliance with statewide regulations. So it does not preempt local governments from having licensing and other operating types of authority in ordinances related to TNC companies. And then the pay provisions of this agreement are in effect December 1st of this year. The preemption provisions, though, are effective currently. Almost moved too quick. The transportation bill also did include a $4.8 million allocation for semi-truck parking in the metro area. This is an allocation to MnDOT, and they have been directed under that legislation to work collaboratively both with other government jurisdictions as well as private entities to look at where some sort of a truck parking facility could be located within the metro district of MnDOT.
Mr. Huser, we have a set of questions for the transportation segment. Is it okay if we do that? Or
Yes, absolutely. I was just going to suggest that, actually. So.
Wonderful. I did put myself in queue. Council President Payne helped me out with that. My question is about the first slide on transportation, just a couple things there. First is the traffic cam safety pilot program. First of all, thank you for all of your efforts on this whole set of transportation work. I know you, Director Topinka, Indiria, and others spent a lot of late nights at the Capitol, and I know you especially, so thank you for all of your efforts. I know it was not easy to get across the line, and you were able to, so really, really appreciate your work. I was just wondering if we had any understanding about relationships to having traffic safety cam pilot on parkways, and then the secondary question is, do we have an understanding of what are the next steps council is going to take on this?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, in terms of the parkways, I might need to ask the attorney if parkways are considered city right-of-way, if they would be considered city right-of-way, because my understanding of the legislation as it was constructed is we would have authority to do this under city right-of-way. So perhaps our city attorney can help us with that.
Chair Chowdhury.
Attorney Nelson.
In response to Steve's question, and might need to caveat it that I'm not 100% sure, but I believe parkways are under the exclusive jurisdiction with some caveats of the park board from a regulatory perspective.
Okay, thank you. I'll just note, I think, as we're thinking about partnerships between other jurisdictions, cities, and then counties, I think it'd be of interest to look into what partnership we can have with the Parks Board on parkways. There's a couple areas that I've definitely received outreach on, and would love to further discuss as we get more information. But if you have any idea of the next steps that devolve upon this body after the passage of this legislation, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, and the second part of your question, Madam Chair, in terms of like next steps for the council, I do think that there would be actions that would need to be taken by the council. It's probably best for me to, maybe we need to have some offline discussions first, but I think it would be up to the council, obviously, in terms of like location. I know Public Works Department is already looking at the types of public outreach that needs to take place and is actually required under the law to take place in order to determine like siting and location of these locations. And it might be a good opportunity for Ethan Foley to actually give you a little bit of update on the work that he's been doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Huser. Hello, Mr. Foley. Thank you for coming up.
Chair Chowdhury, members of the committee, my name is Ethan Foley, Vision Zero Program Coordinator based in Public Works. So I think just to your first question, first of all, the bill does provide the ability to partner with another jurisdiction. So we could, but we'd have to have their approval. So for the parkways or county or MnDOT roadways. And then for next steps, so first of all, we are planning to come to one of the committees. This crosses a few different committees, so we got to figure out which committee soon with an update on next steps here, because we know there's interest across the board. So we are working to start to think about what are the process, and there's a lot of pieces that need to come together from an analysis of potential locations, data collection, funding, staffing, and lots of community engagement and communications planning. So there's a lot that we have to do. I will note that the bill limits, or the law now limits, we can start as early as August 1st, 2025, but not before then. So that's kind of the earliest we could launch, but there's a number of steps that will have to happen before then, a number of actions that the council and the mayor will need to take to make that possible. So we'll have an update. It should probably be within the next couple months to appropriate committee with more details.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Next, I will call on Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan, if you could turn around, Mr. Frawley. I just want to recognize you for your hard work on the red light and speed cameras. It's a very much needed. And your answer, when I was in committee testifying, your answer as to what someone should do when their car receives a ticket, and that would be the opportunity to educate the driver of the car as to the importance of not running red lights and how speed is so dangerous. That was a very clever answer, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and I want to thank again Steve for all his work and the IGR team.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Huser, I do have a question about the in the transportation bill for the Met Council and MnDOT to collaborate on future light rail. So that includes the Blue Line, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Rainville, I would have to look and see on the exact effective date of that provision to see if it, my recollection is that it may not, but I would want to double check and get back to you on that.
I would appreciate that because, as you know, I have a lot of controversy in the route going through the part of the ward that I represent, and I know other council members are facing similar challenges. So we need to know that information. If you could just let me know, that'd be great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Wonderful. Next, I will call on Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chaudhry. I actually have a question about the semi-truck parking piece, and if we know if CPAD is planning to work with MnDOT around this. I know I've had lots of conversations directly with Representative Noor, which maybe have been the lead author on this. He's been very passionate about this, and knowing that in both my ward, that is also within his district, we have a lot of concerns around semi-truck parking and just semi-truck traffic mitigation, but also the concerns of us finding space just for parking. So just wanted to get a sense if we knew if staff was intending to reach out to MnDOT about potential next steps that could then be communicated to council.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, I think your instincts are correct. Representative Noor was, I am aware that he was working on this provision specifically. He's been a good advocate for those folks who are looking to make sure that they can conduct their business and have an opportunity to park, closer to home. The short answer is I'm not sure. I know in the past that there has been, directions to CPAD staff to look at where potential parking for semi-trucks in the city could be. My recollection of the results of that work was that we're very limited on a space that would be appropriate and work well within the city. That being said, I know that we have continued some work over the last few years to try and look at where is a place within at least the region that could be usable for folks, for owner-operators within the city to make use of, whether that's in St. Paul or a neighboring suburb. I think that would be the work that will start to be used. I think, my telling you all this information and my direct outreach to CPAD, I will make them aware of this opportunity because I do view it as an opportunity to take a look. The use of that money is pretty flexible in terms of where in any kind of a project the use of that money could go. So that part is helpful as well. So, it may not be in the city of Minneapolis. I think we want to make sure that what does come out of this is helpful to residents within the city of Minneapolis.
Awesome, and I'll make sure to follow up with CPAD too around that. Thank you.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, I haven't forgotten Council President Payne's question about pedestrian walls, if it would be appropriate for me to answer that now.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Huser.
All right, and so if I'm remembering your question correctly, Council President Payne, so there would should the city decide to have an additional pedestrian mall beyond Nicollet Mall, which is the current pedestrian mall the city has, my understanding would be that yes, it would take council action with the mayor in order to decide where in city right of way this would be located, and then depending on where it is located, it would, depending on the interactions with other road jurisdictions right of way, it would potentially necessitate a consultation with a different road authority or potentially sign off from another city government, depending on where we're potentially looking to locate something. So I think that's the short answer is yes, it would take action, and depending on where, that would determine how much other types of action would be necessary.
Madam Chair, may I? That's really helpful. Thank you. I've talked a lot about some interest in having Quincy Street be a pedestrian mall, and I'm hoping other council members are interested, and we could maybe collectively think about a package of areas of our city that could be a good fit for this. So thank you.
Thank you, President Payne. I will recognize Attorney Nelson.
Thanks, Chair Chaudhry. I'll just add a little bit of additional information. I agree with everything Mr. Huser said. And I know many of you know this, but for purposes of the public record, it's the city's right-of-way, the city's streets, the city doesn't own the underlying fee title to the streets. What the city has is an easement that lies over the top for transportation purposes. And so the adjacent abutting property owners still own to the halfway point of the street underneath the city's easement. And so if I recall right, and I looked at the pedestrian mall stuff a few years ago when there was some consideration and leading into this bill, and I haven't looked at it recently, but there's typically going to be a balancing test that's required in order to establish a new mall by ordinance, which is how you have to do it. The balancing test takes into account factors that really get at the idea of maintaining reasonably convenient and suitable access to the properties that abut what would be the pedestrian mall or restricted traffic flow. And a lot of that is to avoid takings claims, which would be based in large part, presumably on a denial of reasonably convenient access. And so if I remember right, there isn't any sort of petitioning consent process required at the front end when you're establishing it by ordinance, but it does give abutting property owners a right, if I recall, to protest the establishment of it. And so if a protest petition is filed, a veto petition essentially, with a certain number of abutting property owners objecting to the establishment of the pedestrian mall, that the ordinance would not be able to be adopted. And so there is input there, again, not just required cooperation with other jurisdictions, county roads, parkways, park board, but also abutting, outreach obviously to abutting and adjacent property owners.
Thank you so much, Attorney Nelson. I will call on Councilmember Cashman next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Huser and Mr. Foley, for your work on the traffic red light camera bill. And I will not go into too much detail on this as I look forward to committee discussion and work on this together, but I did want to ask if there was any funding appropriated or if this will come from our city budget, and if you have a sense of how much this will cost.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Cashman, I think so there was an allocation related to the new law. So there's if I'm remembering correctly, it's $1 million, and the bulk of that money is meant for DPS and MnDOT to do some standard setting, to do reporting requirements, to and have a few of the costs that is as part of the kind of helping us run the pilot program. That money is meant to capture those costs. That's not money to the cities that are authorized to do this. So any of the actual city program, part of the program, would have to be at city expense. And in terms of the actual costs, I think it would be determined predominantly by the number of locations in which the city decides it would like to have these. We are allowed under law to have, I believe, up to 41 or 42 locations. My understanding, though, is that initially Public Works is looking at a proposal that would potentially start with 10. So depending on where these are located, how many are being put in place, that will kind of vary the actual cost to the city. And I don't know if, I'm looking back at Mr. Foley to see if he wants to add anything to that.
Thanks, Chair Chowdhury. Committee members. Steve's details are all correct. I will note the legislation does also direct any revenues generated by a program back to operations of the program, and then any excess revenue to traffic safety, traffic calming efforts. And so there's that provision we'd have to consider. I think we are working on evaluating budgetary details across multiple departments and kind of working through those details, and so we'll have more to share on that soon. So, and I will note, Steve's definitely right on the number, that it impacts a lot based on the number, and we may actually be looking at probably starting with 5 initially, just so we can kind of figure out the details and exactly how many staff we're going to need to manage different aspects of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Foley. I will next go to Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do actually have a quick question, and it might have just been answered, but it is again on the traffic camera piece. Is it still, the last time you came before us, Mr. Huser, you talked about the limit to 1 traffic camera per 10,000 population, and so is the limit for us still at 42? And is there still a requirement to be within a certain fairly small distance of a school?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Palmisano, yes to both of your questions. We are still restricted to the per 10,000 of population requirement. But as you heard from Mr. Foley, I think the idea would be that we start small, so 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and then the next part of your question is yes.
Do you remember what the distance was from a school?
It's within 2,000 feet of a school.
That's pretty close. But I would say, as we continue these conversations about locations, and I know Mr. Foley could probably recite off the top of his head where the top 10 places would be, from all of his data collection over the years, but I would really encourage us to start looking at an ability to partner with the county, because in so many parts of our city, the danger and the deaths occur on our county roads. And if we were to locate them in places that would be most effective, I hope we're working very quickly with Hennepin County, because as you said, the county is not part of this pilot program. So we would need to officially partner with them in order to be able to do something like this on these roads. So actually, I wanted to just expand a little bit on Councilmember Wansley's inquiry from earlier. Is my understanding correct that this $4.8 million then would go to MnDOT to explore a parking lot somewhere, and maybe some of that could be the study? You said this is very flexible funding, but some of this could potentially buy a parking lot, right?
Madam Chair and Councilmember, yeah, in theory, that could be what is decided with that. 4.8 million in terms of like buying property, kind of depending on where it is. I don't know how far it goes.
Right. It seems like that would be more likely further out than closer in for that amount of money, but.
My understanding of real estate, which is very limited, would be that that's probably a good assumption.
In the discussions had at the legislature, was there any conversation about what MnDOT then would plan to do with this money? They're not going to sit around and do a study with this much money for a year, are they?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Palmisano, I will say that this provision came in very late in the process, like within the last, I would say, 5 days of session, if my memory's not too mistaken. So there wasn't, I can say that there actually was not much discussion about this. And so I actually still need to reach out to MnDOT to find out if they, where they think they're going to go with that. And my assumption is I probably won't have a lot more clarity on their plans for that for a few months.
Thank you. I wanted to ask these questions because I know it clearly certainly impacts Councilmember Wansley's part of our city, but I know it also does for Councilmember Osmond and Councilmember Jenkins. And others of you, I'm sure, too. But since they're not here, I just wanted to ask that type of clarity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Palmisano. Mr. Huser, just kind of following off of that, do you know who was the legislative sponsor for that addition in the last few days?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that Representative Knorr was a very good advocate for getting that included in the transportation agreement at the end.
Great, thank you. That helps us understand who we can kind of check in and follow up with. Wonderful. Are there any other questions from members of the body on this section of the presentation? Okay, seeing none, we can continue.
So moving to public safety. Just to caveat that this is not an exhaustive list of what was included in the public safety agreement, but I wanted to highlight some of the things that were maybe of most interest to the city and to you all. But the public safety omnibus bill did include $9.5 million of new funding to the Office of Justice Programs at DPS for crime victim services grants. The language does say that, if I'm remembering correctly, that you had a 2024 applicant had to have received money to get this money too. So my understanding is that it is not new grantees that would be able to apply for this money, but it is. I know that this is an issue. The issue of crime victim services is of interest to the city. The bill creates and funds a task force on motor vehicle registration stops, and this includes looking at ways in which to enforce vehicle registration without actually doing traffic stops. So that task force will conduct its work in the coming year. The bill makes any confession by a juvenile that was obtained by deception inadmissible in a court. It makes swatting, which is when a fictitious call is sending first responders to a public official's home or peace officer or other employee, it makes that a felony offense in law now. And then the agreement bans the gay panic defense or trying to use as a defense that a perpetrator found out about the sexuality of a victim as some sort of a defense for the crime. That is now no longer an applicable defense in the state of Minnesota. This was a policy position of the city of Minneapolis, so we're very happy to see that got done this session as well. Other provisions in the public safety bill, it increases the penalty for making a straw firearm purchase from a gross misdemeanor to a felony. This provision was recently signed by Governor Walz. It also bans the binary trigger device. This is a type of a device on a semi-automatic weapon that when you pull a trigger and then release the trigger, a bullet is fired from a semi-automatic weapon. Those are now banned in the state of Minnesota. And then it also, the bill prevents peace officers from making a traffic stop for a secondary offense. It prevents law enforcement from then asking if the driver can identify the reason for the stop. So that was included as part of this provision. And I believe I can pause there if there are any questions related to the public safety portion.
Okay. I will recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. I just had a question related to the Crime Victim Services grant. Do you know if there was any reassessment or reevaluation of the criteria that went along with that? I know what I've heard in the past, especially as someone who championed a victim service program here, just recognizing it's because what is at the statewide level, I've heard is very restrictive. So wasn't sure, was there any conversation around that in committee?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Wansley, off the top of my head, I am not recalling that conversation happening. I can take a look back though to see, I can consult with a few folks who I know might have a better recollection of that committee and get back to you.
Awesome. And then if there's any guidelines that can also be shared with council members around this too. Again, I know this has been an interest amongst my constituents. Also, I've heard from constituents across the city that they would love to see some type of resources around victim services be offered at the local level. So basically, how would our municipal government interact with the Office of Justice programs around this? So it'll be good to have that clarity. And then really was excited to see the legislation related to the traffic stop, specifically that preventative measure for peace officers. I know there's lots of just angst and grief and anger in our community around the dismissal of charges for the officer who shot and killed Ricky Cobbs. And I know there's lots of continuing conversations around how we can be better at addressing or eliminating traffic stops related deaths at the hands of peace officers. So I'm very grateful that at least our state lawmakers moved some type of preventative measure, and this seems to be reflective of that.
Thank you, Councilmember Wansley. I am not seeing any other questions or comments for this section of the presentation.
All right, and then I'll move to the cannabis section of the presentation. So there was an update to last year's legalization of cannabis in the state of Minnesota. There were some pretty substantial modifications to that legislation. The Office of Cannabis Management will now be allowed to issue temporary licenses to potential retailers and others without first requiring that they obtain a physical space to conduct their business. The cities will still have to prove that they are within local zoning compliance for their final licensing approval. So so one way to say that is we still continue to have our zoning authority as a local government related to these businesses and operators. But when compliance for the licensee is determined to be in compliance with that local zoning ordinance, will happen towards the end of their final licensing rather than at the front end. What that is meant to do is to allow a little bit of an ease for those businesses to get kind of off the ground and get going, so they get a provisional license before they get a final license. The changes also will allow for social equity applicants, which are defined as people who were harmed by over-prosecution of cannabis in the past. They will get earlier license approval. And one other big change related to that is that the state is now going to a lottery process. And so there is different times in which different applicants would then be a part of that lottery process. There are also changes to the local public health grant funding that were included in last year's bill. The bill includes a change to the allowable uses of these grant fundings. It was directly allocated to local public health agencies. Instead of the funding being used for education and community outreach, the language has now expanded to specify that the funding must also be used for prevention, education, and recovery programs that focus on substance misuse prevention and treatment options. And I can pause there if there are any questions about those changes.
Are there any other questions from council members on this section? I'm not seeing any, so you may proceed, Mr. Huser.
And I believe this is my last section. So the bonding, as Katie, I think, mentioned, or Director Topinka mentioned earlier, the legislature did not pass either a general obligation bond or a cash capital investment bill. The last day of session, there was an effort to pass a $71 million cash bill. It did not get passage within the Senate before the midnight deadline. That bill would have included $5.7 million for the Roof Depot project, but because the bill did not pass in time, that money will not be coming to the city. The geo bonding bill that was proposed earlier in the last week of session did include funding for the Nicollet Avenue Bridge and the ADA funding request that the city had at the legislature. I can stop there if there's any questions about that.
Does anyone have any questions on those parts of the presentation? No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mr. Huser. Oh, I'm seeing Councilmember Palmisano in the queue.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm then that other things that we've been tracking, because they're part of our legislative agenda, then also didn't get done. And some of the things that I'd had on my list was Boston Terrace. Boston Terrace was in the bonding bill that didn't get done then?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Palmisano, the two different drafts of a capital investment bill that we were able to see towards the end of session did not include Boston Terrace, did not include the water main ask that we had, and I'm blanking. No, those were all of our asks. So it did include, one bill, the general obligation bond draft of a bill that we saw, which was not, I want to caveat, that was not an agreement amongst all that needed to be in agreement.
Sure.
But that did include funding for ADA. It did include funding for the Nicollet Avenue Bridge. But the other two asks that we had were not included in that. And
So
then
Boston Terrace and Roof Depot were not included in that.
Roof Depot I'm looking at Katie. It was so Roof Depot was only in the cash, so the general fund in capital investment bill. It was included there. It was not included in the draft we saw of a general obligation bond proposal.
And if you remember, could you comment on the asset preservation in the Minneapolis Veterans Home building remodel? The asset preservation was about the veterans' homes in a number of places across Minnesota, but one of those was Minneapolis, and it was a $9 million appropriation, and the $16 million appropriation was for the Minneapolis Veterans Home remodel.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Palmisano, my recollection is that that was included in the general obligation bond draft that we saw. But as I said, that was not a full agreement. And so it's hard to guess at what the chances were for that bill. Obviously, at the end of the day, it did not pass.
Right. I just was curious how far along they got, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Huser, just following in that same vein, was there any communication from legislative leadership on the items that were in the bill in regards to prioritization in the next legislative session or other discussions related to that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's hard to speculate on that. I mean, I do think that a lot will be determined by the next election, the election in November. So if the legislature has a similar makeup to as it is today, I think that there's less work to do in terms of starting over. But every legislative session is a little bit different and kind of isolated into itself. So I would say that if all things staying relatively similar to the situation that there is at the legislature today, there's maybe a little bit less work for our team to do to make the case for those projects. So a lot will, it's hard to say for certain, but yeah, I think it's a positive that we saw them in drafts. I think that part is good, but it is hard to guess going forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Huser. I'll just note to council members, my speaker management is not launching, so if you could use your placards to just note where you are in queue, that would be helpful for me. And I'll also note we're at 8 council members here, and so we need 7 to continue business. So I'll ask council members to remain for the remainder of the presentation. I believe we just have a handful of slides.
Thank you.
Chair, council members, good morning. My name is Indiria Falana, Government Relations Representative with the City of Minneapolis. I'm going to be covering the next set of slides, starting with housing. So we were successful in getting our comprehensive plan clarification language adopted in the large omnibus bill package. And the Coalition of Support and Labor Organizations, environmental groups, housing providers, League of Minnesota Cities, and Metro Cities really helped us get this across the finish line this year. So rather than exempting all comprehensive plans from the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, the language now clarifies that comprehensive plans are not subject to 116D, which is the section of statute that establishes the environmental impact statement process. It also makes clear in statute that individual projects are not subject to environmental review. And there is also a narrower provision applying only to current comprehensive plans for cities of the first class in the metro area. So this is what provides clarification that that our comprehensive plan, the Minneapolis 2040 plan, is not subject to claims under MIRA. There were also changes to the metro sales tax. So last session, the local affordable housing aid program was created as part of the metro sales tax. So this was a 1/4-cent sales tax increase for the 7-county metro area that funds rental assistance and provides aids to cities and counties for affordable housing development. This session, modifications to the usage of funds were further clarified in state statute. So it clarified that proceeds from this sales tax revenue should be used as an additional resource rather than to replace current sources of funding. Local governments will also be required to report to Minnesota Housing Finance Agency on their use of these funds. And then there was a $471,000 appropriation in fiscal year 2025 to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency to conduct a work group consisting of the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services, representatives from county and tribal housing administrators, and then housing nonprofit agencies. And the purpose of the work group is to identify the amount of funding needed to meet all emergency rental assistance needs. So after the conclusion of this work group, the Commissioner of DHS must submit a report to the legislature annually on January 15th, detailing the projected need for emergency rental assistance. And then the Minnesota Cooperative Housing Act. So this was a standalone bill that passed earlier on in session, and it clarifies the requirements to create and operate cooperatives in Minnesota by consolidating housing, cooperative, incorporation, and governance under one statute. And then single meter utility service modification. So this was another standalone bill, and it passed and was signed into law. So it clarifies that tenants in a shared meter building will only pay for their fair share of utilities and not be charged for common areas used by the housing provider. So like an office for the management company, any vacant units, laundry rooms, and pools. In addition, it also provides the same protection to tenants in shared metered buildings as those who get their service from regulated utilities. So one example of this is allowing tenants to enter into a payment agreement if they fall behind on a payment. And then another example is that tenants in shared metered buildings are now protected during the cold weather period, so heat emergencies and medical emergencies. So those protections are now extended to tenants of shared metered buildings. The Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program provides supportive and financial assistance to families, youth, and individuals experiencing homelessness or are at risk of becoming homeless. And then this direct financial assistance may include covering rent, utilities, payments, or other housing costs. And there's about $8.1 million appropriated for this program. And then the legislature this session approved one-time funds in the amount of $3.3 million for the Emergency Services Program. So the state uses this funding to provide grants to organizations to provide emergency shelter, motel vouchers, day shelter, street outreach, and essential services for people who are homeless. So these grants, so this is a competitive program, grants will be awarded to entities that received an award in the previous round from last year and had an increase in demand since the time of last year's award. And then on to renter protection. So this was a smaller standalone omnibus bill this year. And it built upon the policy provisions passed last session. So included in the bill are policies that strengthen tenant protections, increase landlord obligations and responsibilities, expand remedies available to tenants, and make the landlord-tenant process more transparent and equitable. In addition, the tenants' right legislation also marked the first time that two Black women co-chaired a conference committee in the state legislature. So one was Rep. Esther Agbaje and the other was Senator Zainab Mohammed. So our Minneapolis delegation members made history. So some highlights of the bill include remedies for construction delays. So this provides specific remedies in a situation where a landlord has rented a unit and either new construction or remodeling or additions are not completed, and the tenant cannot move into the unit. So this was prompted by the housing project in Dinkytown last fall. Right to organize. So this establishes a right to organize for tenants living in a residential building and requires landlords to allow certain organizing activities to happen at the residential building. And then the use of individual tax ID numbers. So this prohibits landlords from requiring the use of a social security number on a rental application when the prospective tenant has an individual taxpayer identification number. So this will allow undocumented immigrants to apply for housing. And then right to contact emergency services. So this clarifies the tenant's right to contact emergency services, including allowing calls for mental health crises and health crises. And then lastly, ending a lease when medically necessary. So this was a provision that passed as part of last year's tenants protections omnibus bill. So this year was just further clarified that when one of the tenants on a lease, so this further clarifies that only one of the tenants on a lease must meet the qualifications of an infirm tenant to allow all the tenants to give notice and to move out.
Ms. Falana, is it all right if we ask you a couple questions on the housing section?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I will call on Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. And thank you, Ms. Falana, for the update. I remember there was an email from you, Director Topinka, that said emergency shelter funding, and Councilmember Wansley brought this up. Is the, 2.3 for emergency services, that funding?
The 3.3 million.
3.3.
Yes.
So just to be clear, no new organizations that are opening up shelters. There's a new one opening in my ward who's looking for funding to start this, to open their service. They would not be eligible if they were not funded last year.
Chair Chowdhury, Councilmember Cashman, that is the way the language is written this year. It's for those service providers who received payments during the last round of awards.
Okay, thank you. And a second question, and it's about the People Over Parking Act or bill. Did this receive a hearing in committee, and do you have an update on how it was received and what arguments for and against, and who showed support for it?
Yeah, Chair Chowdhury, Councilmember Cashman. So it received one hearing, I believe, in the Senate, in the State and Local Government Committee. But unfortunately, there was no state and local government omnibus bill this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of fell by the wayside. Not sure if it'll come back next session, but yeah.
Thank you for that update.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Falana. I'll go to Councilmember Wansley next.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. I just wanted to also do the shout out for Identity, Dinkytown. This was another action where by council taking action, we were able to also work with our colleagues at the statewide level to make sure this doesn't happen across the state. People might remember about 500 students in my ward were displaced because of an out-of-state real estate company called Identity. Basically didn't have their stuff together, and that resulted in students not having housing. So we were able to create a remedy on an ordinance level last fall and was able to work in partnership with our statewide leaders. I know Senator Fate was a phenomenal champion, and also our students who did a lot of organizing and advocacy to get some protective measures across the finish line at the state level too. So I just want to give those folks a shout out, and glad that we have a statewide option around this.
Thank you so much. I don't think there are any other questions on this part. You may continue, Ms. Falana.
All right, I also just wanted to note in the housing section what did not pass. So as previously stated, the People Over Parking Act did not pass this session. Also, the missing middle housing bill, as you all may be familiar with. So this legislation would have preempted local decision-making authority over zoning and land use to create more middle housing. So that's townhomes, duplexes, and triplexes. So this bill did move through both bodies and received hearings, but it did not pass. But we do expect it to receive additional consideration in future sessions. And then the prohibition of corporate purchasing of single-family homes. So this legislation would prohibit a corporate entity from owning 10 units or more of single-family housing. This did not pass. There was some disagreement on how many units a corporation should be allowed to own under the bill. And then lastly, source of income protection discrimination. So this legislation would prohibit landlords from discriminating against a tenant based on their use of federal, state, or local rental assistance, including Section 8 housing vouchers. The bill was heard, but it was not included in the final omnibus bill. So next, I'll move on to the Sustainability, Energy, and Environment section. So first, I want to highlight the Packaging Waste and Cost Reduction Act, also known as EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. So the purpose of this new law is to hold manufacturers accountable for the packaging that they produce by requiring producers to work with existing waste haulers and recycling facilities to ensure recycling services are as conveniently available as trash collection is. In addition, packaging producers are incentivized to increase recycled content. This will relieve local governments and residents of some of the costs of recycling. And this is important because packaging, including single-use plastic, makes up about 40% of our waste stream, and a lot of it cannot be easily recycled. In addition, under the bill, The PRO is established, which stands for Producer Responsibility Organization. So then companies will have to register with the PRO and pay fees to fund the organization. This will be overseen by the MPCA. Over the next few years, there will be a needs assessment to determine the strength of the existing system and ways to improve it. And then beginning on February 1st of 2029, local governments will then be reimbursed in a phased-in way. So at 50%, it will begin on February 1st, 2029. The annual net costs will rise to 75% by February 1st, 2030, and then 90% by February 1st of 2031. So the reimbursable costs to local governments include the cost to collect, transport, and process covered material, adjusting downward for the average fair market value of the covered material in the region. So contamination management and administrative costs are also included in the reimbursable funds. And then composting grants for multifamily buildings. So about $593,000 in the next fiscal years to establish a grant program through the MPCA to fund pilot projects that encourage composting in multifamily buildings. So eligible applicants include cities and counties and owners of multifamily buildings. And then there's also some funding for community tree planting grants. So 2 programs were created, one at the Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, and the Met Council, to provide grants for removal and planting of shade trees and replacing trees lost to pests, disease, or storms, or establishing more diverse community forests. And then priority must be given to projects removing and replacing ash trees posing a significant public safety concern, and to projects located in areas meeting certain criteria. So there's about $8 million available between these 2 programs. And then air pollution facilities compliance protocols. So this directs the MPCA to develop compliance protocols for all facilities and provide for more frequent physical measurement of emissions using a variety of methods. So this policy provision comes from a need to ensure consistency in enforcement and compliance for air emission limits. And then Solar App Plus. So there's about $1.5 million in one-time funding, and it's appropriated to establish a program in the Department of Commerce to provide financial incentives to local permitting authorities to deploy federally developed software called Solar App Plus that automates and streamlines the permit reviewing process and issuing process for residential solar projects. So incentives may range from $5,000 to $20,000. And more than 170 communities across the country have adopted this app, or they're piloting the Solar App software. And then there's about $1.2 million in one-time funding appropriated to establish a new program in the Department of Commerce to award grants to cities, counties, and towns and the Met Council to defray the cost of analysis to determine the feasibility of and design options for installing a geothermal energy system. So I will pause there for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Falana. I'll go to Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Falana. About the extended producer responsibility, I mean, this is huge, right? This is a really great way for us to reduce our waste stream and then also capture funding in order to divert more of our recycling. And I'm curious about who will be required to be in the PRO, the Producer Responsibility Organization. What kind of companies or suppliers or packaging companies will be required to pay fees to that organization?
Yes, so companies that, I might need to get back to you on the specifics, but I believe it's a companies that like produce packaging.
And would they be like, if they're based in Minnesota, or if they produce a certain amount of packaging, or is it kind of all of them? I'm happy to follow up with you later on this. And then also, how much will this PRO, Producer Responsibility Organization, generate? How much funding would be directed towards municipalities? And then will the city of Minneapolis have to apply for that funding? And what's the timeline? Some of the questions that I have about this, and look forward to discussing this more in the C&I committee, if possible, with our solid waste team.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilmember Wansley next.
Thank you, Chair Chaudhry. So my question first is related to the composting grants for multifamily buildings. I want to see if we had any awareness if the city, specifically I'm assuming CPAD or even MPHA, would be looking to apply. That might require a follow-up. I'm really interested in the MPHA piece because I know public housing residents have shared with me a desire to have access to this and wanting to make sure that our public housing residents are able to have options for composting. The second question I had was related to the tree removal. We've had a robust conversation amongst this body about ash trees and the disproportionate financial impact it has on specifically Black residents, and wanted to know if the funding available for that piece is retroactive, or basically if you've already removed it, paid for it, could you apply? And then last question related to geothermal energy. Super excited about this one. I'm also wanting to know if this might be Public Works or a number of departments actually within the city, if they were planning to apply, especially since geothermal energy is part of our climate equity plan. So it would be great if our staff could make use of these dollars and get a sense of analysis that we could look at implementing this. I know we've tried in a number of sites. We've tried in my ward. And would love to explore others. So if there's money to do that, it would be great if our staff could apply.
Chair Chaudhry, Councilmember Wansley, I can answer one of those questions regarding the community tree planting grants. I do not believe the language allows for coverage of retroactive relief, unfortunately.
So just follow up, Chair Chaudhry. That sounds like that will probably be a staff memo. It sounds like you have the questions then for a follow up.
Thank you, Councilmember Wansley. I'll work with our clerk to make sure that those questions are submitted to our Intergovernmental Relations team. I put myself in queue. I just wanted to see, Ms. Falana, if you had any context or updates you could share around the bills that were related to Smith Foundry. I know one was in our legislative agenda and another was individually supported by council members, the amortization bill. Just kind of how things ended up landing. I know there wasn't passage this time around.
Yes, so the amortization bill received one hearing in the Senate State and Local Government Committee. Again, unfortunately, there was not a state and local government bill this year, so the bill fell by the wayside. I'm not aware of any plans to bring the bill back next year at this time. And then related to other pieces of legislation that was geared towards Smith Foundry, I can follow up with you guys on more specifics.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to take a moment to appreciate all the community members that showed up to the Capitol and council members that showed up to the Capitol in support of this environmental justice resolution. I know that there's multiple community members from the East Phillips community where this mattered a lot, and also many people who are parents that send their children to Circulo, which is a daycare nearby, from across the city that have been really great advocates. So I'll look forward to following up, and thank you. I believe that we just have one more question in queue so far, and that is, it's for the end? Okay, wonderful. You can continue.
All right. This is my last slide. But before I delve into Health and Human Services, I wanted to just finish up on the last area. So there's two things. So we were working on, so what did not pass is specific relief for emerald ash borer. So we were working on this. So last session, the Minnesota Relief Program was funded by about $15 million. And this is a competitive grant program that for municipalities to apply for funding to assist with planting, maintenance, and removal of trees, with priority given to removal of ash trees infected with emerald ash borer. So this program is run through the DNR, and we applied as a city but did not receive any funding. So this session, there was an effort to ensure that we receive some funding for this, as we do have trees on private property that are EAB infected, and removal can be quite expensive for homeowners. So included in the cash bonding bill that did not pass, unfortunately, was an $800,000 appropriation to the city of Minneapolis for EAB aid. So I just wanted to note that we were working on that. In addition, the repeal of bans on plastic bag ordinances. So this policy provision would have repealed a preemptive state statute that prohibited local governments from adopting ordinances related to banning of plastic bags. So we were working on trying to get this policy provision to pass this session. It was included in the House's state and local government omnibus bill, but unfortunately, again, we did not have a state and local government omnibus bill this session. So next is Health and Human Services. So I'll start with some 340B program updates. So our health department runs and manages 8 school-based clinics in Minneapolis public schools, and these school-based health clinics are a part of the 340B drug program, and it's a federal program that requires drug manufacturers to provide outpatient drugs to healthcare organizations such as hospitals, FQHCs, et cetera, at reduced prices. So to qualify for the program, covered entities must serve a disproportionate share of low-income patients. So related to the program, the first thing that got done was a policy provision that would prohibit drug manufacturers from denying covered entities drug discounts provided by the federal 340B drug program. So this will help safeguard the integrity of the program. And then the other item that passed is related to reporting requirements. So this just adds additional reporting requirements to what was passed last year, but I do not believe our health department has to do these reporting requirements. It's mostly for hospitals. And then some school-linked behavioral health grants. So there is a $3 million appropriation for school-linked behavioral health grants. So this will positively benefit the students who are in our Minneapolis public schools by providing them with school-connected clinical treatments to increase accessibility for children and youth who are uninsured or underinsured. And students receive these services through our school-based health clinic, so we do apply for that funding. And then included in the education finance bill is a new law that modifies requirements related to health education by requiring districts to adopt state health standards. So under current law, school districts develop their own health education standards. So for other subject areas such as language, arts, and math, the state develops standards that all districts must implement. So now with this, there will be a statewide approach to how health education is taught in our schools. So this will help ensure that all students across the state, regardless of school district, are learning the same health-related things. And then prior authorization. So this session we advocated for insurance prior authorization reform in order to remove unnecessary administrative hurdles, reduce delays in care, improve the patient access to timely and appropriate treatments, which ultimately enhance the overall quality of healthcare delivery. So this new law will reduce delays in care and improve patient access to timely and appropriate treatments. Specifically, just wanted to note that beginning on January 1st, 2025, oral buprenorphine, which is the generic name for Suboxone, will be added to the list of medications that will be prohibited from requiring prior authorization. And then lastly, exemption of certain licensed facilities from local government rental licensing regulations. So this is actually something that we advocated against this session, as it was a bill that was moving and received bipartisan support, and it was included in the Human Services Policy Omnibus Bill. So this prohibits municipalities from applying rental licensing regulations to specific state licensed residential programs and assisted living facilities. We don't currently license group homes and assisted living facilities as a city, but if we were going to, this new law preempts us from doing so. And then just wanted to note one thing that did not pass this session is lead funding. So last session, a bill passed that updated the state statute for what an elevated blood level means. So it went from 10 micrograms per deciliter to 3.5 micrograms per deciliter. So this was done without funding for the few local public health agencies that do intervention work. So most cities rely on the state's health department, but our public health department or public health agency does do the intervention work. So we are one of a few in the state that do the work. So this session, we had a joint funding ask with St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health to cover this work for our respective cities and county. This request wasn't able to be funded, unfortunately, with just really tight budget constraints. But this is something that we are planning on bringing back and working on next session. And I will pause for any questions. It's my last slide.
Thank you, Ms. Villana. I don't think there are any other questions on this.
Okay.
Really appreciate your thorough presentation.
All right.
Chair Chowdhury and council members, we just have one last slide, so I will be brief and wrap things up. But before I do that, I did just want to thank our team for all their hard work this session. Kind of hearing it all laid out like this, there was really a lot that happened, even though it felt like it was going to be hard. It wasn't quite as much as 2023, but it was still very busy. So just really appreciate the team's hard work and sticking with things. And there were a lot of unforeseen circumstances and challenges this session. And I'm just really proud that everybody was able to stick through it and get some really great things done for the city. Also want to thank the Minneapolis legislative delegation. And we worked with every single member of the delegation on different things this session. You know, they authored bills for us. They helped get city priorities through either behind the scenes or through their committee processes. So we're just really grateful for their partnership as well. And so I will just, one last thing I wanted to know, we are working on a written summary of the information we presented to you today that will include a lot of the details that we presented. And we'll be sharing that out. We plan to put it on the IGR website as well. And that would be something you'd be welcome to share out with constituents or others who may be interested. So we'll be getting that to you this week as well. And then just noting, we do start pretty much right away diving into figuring out what's going to be on our 2025 legislative agenda. So we begin our internal policy liaison team process this summer, where representatives from all departments in the city come together to bring forward ideas we may want to consider for the next agenda. So we'll be embarking on that process, presenting to you all in the fall with a new agenda adoption late this year. And I will be working with Chair Chowdhury on making sure we're figuring out how the council can best engage in that process as well. And then lastly, I'll just note that the 2025 legislative session begins a little bit later than normal for the even number year. They pushed it back, and it will be starting mid-January. Of course, the whole House is up for re-election, and so it will be, it's a new legislature. There are some people retiring and others who are, running for a different office, and so there will definitely be some new faces. The House will have to establish a new committee chairs and committee structure. The Senate, while the entire Senate is not up for re-election, there are a couple of, at least one person running for a different office, so there will be some changes in the Senate as well. So we'll have more to share on that once the new session begins next year. But thank you for listening to the lengthy presentation, and we appreciate all of your support throughout session as well.
Thank you so much, Director Topinka. Really, really incredible work to you and your team. I just wanted to take a moment to also echo that gratitude to our Minneapolis delegation, both in the Senate and the House. They really showed up for us and opened the door for us, literally and figuratively, in many ways, at many different hours of the day and night. And I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we started this legislative session by saying it's going to be quick, it's going to be short, and I don't think it felt that way by any means. And there were many moments where we were kind of holding our breath on very large watershed legislation for the city of Minneapolis. And I just have so much gratitude for you, Steve, Indiria, Lauren, the whole team, for just communicating with council members, meeting with us bi-weekly, communicating and working with me, helping us coordinate testimony with council members and staff, and then just kind of making sure that we were all held together through this process. And I look forward to the work that we're going to be doing on the off season with our legislative delegation. And just thank you. And thank you to the members of this council for working through this legislative session as well. I will pass it on to Councilmember Payne, who wanted to give some remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, you actually stole my thunder. I just wanted to jump in the queue and say I'm just really grateful for all your hard work. This was the most engaged I got in at the Capitol since being elected, and just seeing you in action was just really exciting and fun and terrifying, but mostly like really productive. And there was some real challenges this year, but I mean, the culmination of the last 2 years have been transformational for our state and our city, and it's through your effort. And I just wanted to share my gratitude for that. And I especially wanted to thank you, Chair Chowdhury. You made a lot happen, and through your personal commitment to this role, I think a lot more happened for us in the city of Minneapolis as a result of your leadership and partnership with our professional staff. So I wanted to thank you too.
Thank you. We also have Council Vice President Chug Tai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to just join both you and the Council President in thanking our staff in IGR for their tremendous amount of work this year and every year at the Capitol, advocating for our city's needs and on behalf of our adopted legislative platform. This was also, my first year being really a lot more involved at the Capitol and the work that's happening there. And I think one of the best lessons I learned that I'm gonna apply in next year's legislative session, and hope to just invite other colleagues into as well. There are ways in which our staff does their best to track what's happening at the Capitol that's important to us as individual members or to our wards, and they do a tremendous job of doing that. And they're a small team, and we can certainly wait for them to reach out to ask us if we have an interest in being engaged on things that we care about or are important to our wards or affecting our constituents in unique ways, or we can ask ourselves and we can reach out to them and make that offer. And in that, I have found just a tremendous amount of partnership and so much that I have learned from our staff. So wanted to thank you all for that. And for your work. And then secondly, Chair Chowdhury, I want to thank you for stepping into this role. Ward 12 has a proud legacy now of having their council member serve as the Intergovernmental Relations Chair. You came in new this term and stepped into the role, and I think helped us be, as a body, and yourself as a new member, Councilmember Cashman as a new member, be more connected to our work at the Capitol, and that's really important. And I have just heard a lot of excellent feedback from members of the Minneapolis delegation, who we share constituents with, all of us do, that it was so. It was a refreshing change for them to see the council be a lot more engaged and take the work of partnership with the state a lot more seriously. And I hope this is a trend that we continue. So wanted to thank you for that. I think you've done a tremendous job as our new Intergovernmental Relations Chair. Thank you for all of your work.
Thank you, Council Vice President. I see Councilmember Chavez on queue.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury, and I just want to thank our intergovernmental relations staff for all their work. I know you all spent late nights. I mean, sometimes you got calls late too, of trying to advocate for the legislative agenda and for a lot of the priorities that Minneapolis has to improve the lives of our residents. So I want to thank all of you for your incredible work that you've done, not only at the local level, at the state level, and federal government, and the work that you're going to continue doing, because I know things are not technically done in a way. We still got to figure out a variety of other issues, but just want to thank you all for that work. I want to give a shout out to our Minneapolis delegation as well. We know that they worked very hard to try to accomplish many of the priorities that we set forward and that they care about for our city. And then lastly, did also want to give thanks to Councilmember Chowdhury, Chair Chowdhury, for her work as the chair of this committee. I know that you and our staff, Intergovernmental Relations Committee, prioritize a lot of the issues that we care about, including the 2040 plan that our staff worked on diligently to get across the finish line. I know you spent a lot of time with our legislators advocating for that as well, making sure that it is a city priority, that members know why we need it and the impacts of not having that in place and what it would mean for Minneapolis for the future, along with the speed cameras and a variety of other issues that our staff also prioritize. So just want to thank our incredible staff, you, Chair, for the work that you have done in leading this committee and representing our city well.
Thank you. I don't see any further discussion. Seeing that, I will ask the clerk to file the report. And with that, we've concluded all business to come before the committee today, and without objection, we are adjourned.